Hi, my name is Andre and I'm with Soloma Realty. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the top 5 negatives and drawbacks of living in a high-rise in downtown Chicago. Let's start with number 5, higher cost. Now, the cost of living in a high-rise apartment building in Chicago is typically higher than if you're renting a condo or if you're renting a townhome in the city. And specifically, I'm referring to cost per square footage. And the reason being is because these high-rise apartment buildings tend to be in higher density areas where the real estate is more expensive to develop. And then the second reason is these buildings generally have a much bigger amenities package than anything that a condo building would have. There are some condo buildings that offer similar packages, but typically it's mostly apartment buildings here in downtown Chicago that offer really nice amenities like a pool, a gym, a steam room, sauna in some of them. So things of that nature cause the cost of living in a high-rise to be up a little bit higher because that building's spreading the cost of all of those amenities across the residents that are renting in that building. And when I say higher cost, it's not necessarily so high that it makes it unaffordable. It's just a couple $100s a month more, if not a little bit less than that. But it's generally a little bit higher than if you're renting a similar size unit that's in a condo building, or if you're renting a similar size unit that's a townhouse. Okay, number 4, noise. If you're living in the center of the city, it's usually more dense than if you're in the burbs, and that results in more traffic, more people honking on their horn, and generally more noise in that part of the city. How some of these buildings deal with this is they have really good sound insulation, and it actually works. There's a couple of buildings here that are brand new and they have some of the best sound insulation, and you can barely hear a fire truck outside. And yes, if there's a high performance car outdoors, you can still sometimes hear that if they're revving it up, but it's way, way, way better sound insulation than things used to be back in the 80s and 90s. Number 3 is parking. Obviously, the center of the city is more dense, and therefore it is harder to find a parking spot. And some of the ways you get around this is you rent a parking spot from your building, and that can usually cost between $150 to $300 and some even more than $300. Just depends on the type of garage it is, whether it's heated or whether it's open and things of that nature. And the other option is you can find parking on the street, and the downside to that is you're not guaranteed a spot, so you may have to park further away and walk to your building. And I always tell people, if you are living in the center of the city or near it, and you work in the center of the city, you don't really need a car in Chicago. You can get around perfectly fine using the bus routes and the subway routes, and occasionally taking an Uber or taxi or a Lyft. So that's how you kind of get around the parking issue. So that's number 3. Let's move on to number 2, which is lots of snow. Now, if you are living in the center of the city or the surrounding neighborhoods, that means you're closer to the lake. And what happens is a lot of times you have a big snow drift that comes from the lake, and then it's funneled through the wind tunnels created by the high structures here in the downtown area, and it creates just a lot of snow coming in real quick. And it makes the sidewalks sometimes pretty hard to walk on. But the good news is that you have lots of city plows, and you have lots of the local establishments. They're required to shovel their snow pretty quickly. So within a couple hours, maybe a half a day sometimes, the snow is cleared, and you have a nice white walking path, and the snow is plowed from the streets also. So that's how that's kind of handled. But it is a little bit more of a challenge if you're living in the center of the city. So number 1, this is something that gets me the most, okay? And it's traffic. It's the elephant in the room. It's obviously an issue, especially during rush hour in a big city. It's the 3rd largest city in the country. So how do you get around this? Well, you can't, okay? You just have to accept it. The good news is if you are working in the city and you live in the city, you obviously have a shorter exposure to traffic. So that's kind of how you get around that. But those are the top 5 negatives and drawbacks of living in a high-rise in downtown Chicago. Now, if you are moving into the city, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team, and someone will help answer your questions. We work with people who are looking to rent, who are also looking to buy a condo or a townhouse, and people who are relocating out of the city and are looking to sell their condo or townhouse. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you, and have a great day.